Now we know what our core logic is, let's go ahead and implement it. So before we start looping, let's set our state started to be false. We haven't started processing items yet. And then what we'll do for each item, we'll see if we have started, we'll do one thing. Otherwise, we'll do another. Okay, and we'll write this code one bit at a time. I'll just put some passes in here for now so that the syntax is correct. So if we haven't started, which is this bottom part, then we basically want to do nothing unless we see a dashed line, right? So actually, let's go ahead and write this. If the line starts with dashes, so this is our first bit of string processing. How do we know whether our line starts with dashes? Well, we already know the find method. We can just look for a bunch of dashes. And if those dashes are found at the beginning of the line, then that means the line started with dashes. So we can just say if it finds those dashes at index equals 0, that means the line started with that string. All right, so if we weren't started and we find dashes, okay, now we're ready to start looking for lines, right? So what we can do is say started equals to true. So now, as we're going through, the next time through here, right, started will be true, and we can write this. So what do? Well, normally what we're going to do is for each line, we're going to just add it onto an item string that we've been building up. So let's set an item string, actually I guess we need to do it before the loop starts, to be an empty string. And if we've started, let's add onto the item the current line. But what happens if while we're doing this we find another set of dashes? That means that the current item is finished and we should start a new item. So before we add on this line, we better check to see if it is dashes. We can just copy this line and put this here. So if we found dashes, then we don't want to add on the item. Instead, we want to process the item. So let's go make a new function which will process an item. Take an item. So if we found dashes, let's process the item. Otherwise, we can build up the item. And now, this is sort of, I think, all we need for our core file processing. And when we process an item, we can do whatever we want with this string. For now, why don't we just print out the first item. Print out the item one by one and see what they look like. Let's run this. Let's just fix this bug here. It shouldn't have said process file. It should say process item. Go ahead and run this. And now we're going to get all of our items one by one. We can't really see that very well, but I'm pretty sure this is working. So now let's go ahead and do the next step, which is this, how are we going to process an item? Well, for each item, we're going to get the string for the whole item, and let's go and try and extract some of the interesting information. Well, let's start by looking for subject. So how are we going to find a subject? Well, any line that starts with subject colon is a line we're looking for, and then we want the rest of the line. But in order to even do that, we have to take this string, which now consists of multiple lines, and split it up into multiple lines, right? Because now each item is actually multi-line string. So in order to do that, I'm going to introduce the strings split method. And the way it works is you take a multi-line string, or really any string, and you call the split method, and you can pass in a parameter which is a sequence of characters, and it will take the big string and split it up into a list of strings separated by whatever characters you put in. And I've said I wanted to split up that string by \ng, which is a carriage return. So this is going to generate a list of lines, one for each string. I think it'll be easier to understand how this code works if we can make this process just a single item while we're debugging. So what I'll do is after we call process item here, I'm just going to temporarily put in a return statement. So this way we'll process the first item and then we'll stop. Then we can see what this looks like. So we'll have split up our item into a bunch of lines. Lines will be a list, and now we can iterate over those lines one at a time for line and lines. Now let's go ahead and print those out, and now we're back in business. Let's run this, and with any luck we should have a single item here. Yes, we do. And now this is we can process, and we can see it's got a website, and it's got a subject line and a where line. So let's get those, let's process those. If line, let's look for subject, subject colon, and again we'll see if it found one at the beginning of the line. So we can do the same trick of find equals 0. Then let's just print the subject. So let's just go ahead and print the line. Now if we do this, we should basically print out one line for the subject. And sure enough, this is exactly what we get. If we want to get rid of the portion of the line that starts with subject, we have to know how many characters this is, and then extract using a slice to extract everything about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's just extract the portion of the string starting at the 9th index and going to the end. And now look at that. We've got this nice subject. I'm afraid we have one more bug in this program, which is going back to our process file function. When we called process item, we didn't reset the item. So when we went to create the next item, we actually were still building on top of the previous item. So we need to do one more thing after we process the item, which is to reset it, set the item string to an empty string before we continue. Now we can go ahead and run this again, where we are looking for the subject line and extracting those first 9 characters. If we run this, we get the first subject. Let's delete this return statement, and now when we run it, look at this, we get all 3 subjects. And to show that this really works, let's try looking at that long one, FYI3. And look at this. We have just extracted our 26 subjects from FYI3. Right? We can run it on FYI4, and we get those. And the key idea here, right, is that we've written a general text processing program. It's specific for FYI emails, but it'll work on any FYI email. All right, we obviously could go ahead and extract the other elements, but I think you get the idea here.